WURD, Philadelphia, Black Talk Media. You're listening to Wake Up with WURD on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, Independent Black Media.
Independent Black Media, 900 AM, 96.1 FM, WURD. Aaron Kwesa here in Du Bois. Dr. Anthony Montero in studio. If you're calling up, call up about Du Bois. Please keep it on topic. One call, 1 minute. 215-634-8065. Again, 215-634-8065.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you.
It's good to be here. And, over the course of this year, we have talked about Du Bois. We've read from his writings. And, of course, he comes off as this great genius, this prolific writer, the scholar, the scientist. But, he was a man. He had a life. He had a mother, father, grandparents. He had children. And sometimes we lose sight of that and the tragedies of life that he experiences or experienced like all of us experience. I have a friend and a member of the Saturday Free School. Her name is Sandra Camacho. And she said to me the other day, she said, I don't love Du Bois. I'm intrigued by Du Bois. And of course, when a woman says she's intrigued by a man, that means a lot more, I think, than even if she said she were in love with him. It's something deeper. But she is researching his life. And so I was thinking about his life. His great-great-grandfather, an enslaved African named Tom, was captured on the west coast of Africa by Dutch slavers and brought to the state of New York. And he fought in the American Revolution on the side of the American revolutionaries against the British, and was granted his freedom and moved his family to Western Massachusetts from New York. And Du Bois's mother is born in about 1830, and her name was Mary Sylvina Burkhart. Du Bois's father, his name was Alfred Du Bois. His mother was of West African origin. His father was Haitian, a Haitian Creole. And they met in Great Barrington. They married. And a little less than 2 years after they marry, Du Bois is born. And Du Bois would always say, he would tell people, there was in his veins a bit of Dutch blood, a bit of French blood, but the blood of Africa flooded his veins. So much so that he would recount a lot of times a African melody which he heard his grandmother sing when he was a child. And linguists have looked at that melody as it was written down by Du Bois. He's going by the sounds that he remembered. And scholars have concluded that it was the Wolof language that she was speaking in, which means that Du Bois's ancestors were from what we today call Senegal, and from the Wolof-speaking people. Well, Du Bois would go on to graduate from high school. He and his mother lived together. That is after Du Bois's grandparents both died. And they lived in a very, very small room in a very poor, in fact, dangerous area of Great Barrington, Massachusetts, where there were a lot of bars, a lot of prostitution, a lot of criminality. But his mother, sometime when Du Bois was quite young, had a stroke, which disabled her for most of his life, and so he had to be her support. She walked with a limp. It is questionable whether or not she even had the use of one of her arms. But after Du Bois graduates from high school, less than a year afterwards, his mother dies, and hence he is motherless. and he wants to go to college. His dream was to go to Harvard, but they're not accepting people from his town and essentially black people at Harvard, even though Du Bois is in Massachusetts. So he works for a year without his mother, and he raises money, and he is admitted to Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. And he goes to Fisk, and he says that there he learned really to be black. And he loved Fisk. He would graduate in 3 years and then go on to Harvard University for graduate school. They admitted him, but with the condition that he had to redo his whole undergraduate degree at Fisk University. And he would say often that that he was at Harvard, but he was not of Harvard. And he would say that the professors at Harvard were no better than those at Fisk. They were just better known. And, he does his PhD there, and then he does postgraduate work at the University of Berlin. He speaks several languages. He is probably the most important intellectual and academic of his generation. But of course, being black, he's not going to get a job at Harvard. He's not going to get a job at the University of Pennsylvania. So he gets a job at Wilberforce College in Wilberforce, Ohio, a historically black college in connected to the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And there he meets his first wife, his wife of over 52 years, Nina Gomer, who would become Nina Gomer Du Bois. And Du Bois is 2 years older than her. And they come to Philadelphia and live at 7th and Lombard, which was not Society Hill then. It was a slum. It was a very poor neighborhood. It was a very tough neighborhood. The smells of horse manure were everywhere. Most of the plumbing and toilets were outdoors. But he lived there. They lived there together, where his first child, who would be named Burkhart, is born. And when his wife is about to give birth, he sends her to Great Barrington, where he was born. So his son is born also in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. But then they return. She returns to Philadelphia, and he gets a job in Atlanta. And in 1899, his son is overcome by a respiratory illness. And because the white doctor will have nothing to do with a black child, and because the black doctor is afraid to come out at night, the baby dies. The second tragic loss of his life. It affected him deeply, and we get a sense of how the death of his son may have impacted him in terms of the death of his mother. So I'd like to just read this part of the Souls of Black Folk, an essay entitled "Of the Passing of the Firstborn." "Within the veil was he born, said I, and there within shall he live, a Negro and a Negro's son, holding in that little head, bitterly, the unbowed pride of a hunted race, clinging with that tiny dimpled hand, wearily, to a hope, not hopeless, but unhopeful, and seeing with those bright, wondering eyes that peer into my soul a land whose freedom is to us a mockery and whose liberty is a lie. I saw the shadow of the veil as it passed over my baby. I saw the cold city towering above the blood-red land. I held my face beside his little cheek, showed him the star children and the twinkling lights as they began to flash, and stilled with an even song the unvoiced terror of my life. So sturdy and masterful he grew, so filled with bubbling life, so tremulous with the unspoken wisdom of a life but 18 months distant from the all life. We were not far from worshiping this revelation of the divine, my wife and I. Here, her own life builded and molded itself upon the child. He tinged her every dream and idealized her every effort. No hands but hers must touch and garnish those little limbs. No dress or frill must touch them that had not weared her fingers. No voice but hers could coax him off to dreamland, and she and he together spoke some soft and unknown tongue, and in it held communion. I too mused above his little white bed, saw the strength of my own arms stretched onward through the ages, through the newer strength of his, saw the dream of my black fathers stagger a step onward in the wild phantasm of the world, heard in his baby voice the voice of the prophet that was to rise within the veil. He died at eventide, when the sun lay like a brooding sorrow above the western hills, veiling its face. When the wind spoke not, and the trees, the great green trees he loved, stood motionless. I saw his breath beat quicker and quicker, pause, and then his little soul leapt like a star that travels in the night, and left a world of darkness in its train. The day changed not. The same tall trees peeped in at the windows, the same green grass glinted in the setting sun. Only in the chamber of death writhed the world's most piteous thing, a childless mother. I shirk not, I long for work, I pant for a life full of striving. I am not coward to shrink before the rugged rush of the storm, nor even quail before the awful shadow of the veil. But hearken, O death, is not this my life hard enough? Is not that dull land that stretches its sneering web about me cold enough? Is not all the world beyond these four little walls pitiless enough, but that thou must need enter here, thou, O death? About my head the thundering storm beat like a heartless voice, and the crazy forest pulsed with the curses of the weak. But what cared I, within my home, beside my wife and baby boy? Wast thou so jealous of one little coin of happiness that thou must need enter there, thou, O death? And then he concludes, if one must have gone, why not I? Why may I not rest me from this restlessness and sleep from this wide waking? Was not the world's alembic time in his young hands, and is not my time waning? Are there so many workers in the vineyard of struggle that the fair promise of this little boy could lightly be tossed away? The wretched of my race that line the alleys of the nation sit fatherless and unmothered, but love sat beside his cradle, and in his ear wisdom waited to speak. Perhaps now he knows the all-love and needs not to be wise. Sleep then, child. Sleep till I sleep, and waken to a baby voice and the ceaseless patter of little feet above the veil. Thank you.
And you have the opportunity to call in and talk about Du Bois. The numbers are 215-634-8065. Again, 215-634-8065, or toll free 1-866-361-0900. We're going to take a quick break and come right back to the phone lines. Here in Du Bois, Dr. Anthony Montero, Queen Quay, super producer, and me, Aaron Smith, young fearless, the rapping professor, and you for waking up with word, y'all.
I feel the earth.
Before she was Carole King, superstar, she was Carole King, teenage songwriter. Her music became the soundtrack to a generation. Her story is the musical of a lifetime.
You got to get up.
neighborhoods and ask the right questions. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me
a 4-word membership. This holiday season, give the gift of independent black media by gifting the ones you love with a 4-word membership. And check out our family membership package. Start or renew right now at wordradio.com or call 215-425-7875. Making people proud. I'ma teach you how. You're listening to Wake Up with Word on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, Independent Black Media.
Independent Black Media, 900 AM, 96.1 FM, WURD. Aaron Smith, Kuesa, Year in Du Bois, Dr. Anthony Montero, and you are on the lines at this time. Reverend Joe Williams from Mount Airy, thank you for waking up with Word.
Smith, Dr. Montero, all you need is a rocking chair and some kids all around you on the floor. Keep reading. This is so wonderful. I don't know what you're going to do next person. Get Paul Robeson or somebody, but you got to keep it going.
Thank you very much, Reverend Joe.
Love
it's
you.
good to hear your voice, man.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for the encouragement.
Brother Timothy from South Philly, thank you for waking up with Word.
Yes, Dr. Montero, I like the way you talked about the humble beginnings of Du Bois.
Right.
And last week you talked about the Atlanta Compromise and Du Bois and how the Niagara movement was formulated because of the Atlanta Compromise. And a very important thing that we must understand that Booker T. Washington was born a slave, much older than Du Bois. He was able to come from Hampton and start the Tuskegee Institute machine in Alabama. But we have to also understand the origins of other people. Like you always talk about Paul Robeson, great man. We have to understand Paul Robeson's dad, who escaped from slavery from North Carolina, fought in the Union Army, and graduated from Lincoln University in 1876, and married a woman who graduated from Lincoln University, who graduated in 1870, Maria Lisa Still, a black Quaker. And we always talk about Robinson for what produced him.
Right.
So I think that the time period that Washington grew up in which what he went through, there was a difference in ideology with the vocation. And he talked about the hand and the 5 fingers.
Yes.
And how they are together on the base of the hand, but the fingers are separated. And I think that the vocation and the intellectual education, like the president of Negro Intellectual, Harold Cruz, says it needs to come together, and it can come together. I think we have to analyze how to bring them both together.
And that's a very good point. And and you are talking about 2 distinct figures in the African American struggle, but both organic to black people. Booker T. Washington, born in slavery, I think in 1858 or thereabouts. Du Bois, born a freedman, but the descendants of slaves, born in Great Barrington, Massachusetts in 1868. But they were both organic to the black community. And that being connected to black folk, living all their lives among black folk, gave a different quality existentially to their beings. And sometimes I wish that we had more leaders and spokesmen like that. But can I just say one thing, Tim? I want you to know we have 3 members of the Saturday Free School here who are also students at Temple University. They just finished their finals. Serafina and Jacob Harris, who are twins, and Brandon Doe. So I just wanted to let you know they're here. So thank you very much, Tim.
Well, it's been a pleasure, sir. Until next time, there's always some information we always share.
Yes, thank you, my brother.
Also, Jamila from Illinois, thank you for waking up with Word.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, yes, every week it is a phenomenal gift that you are providing the city and the country and the world for those who choose to listen. And thank you for sharing this essay from Souls of Black Folks, because it also makes me think of his work from, I think it's Dark Waters with Immortal Child. And I feel like the piece in Immortal Child sort of is an ode to his son Burghardt in when he speaks speaks of the gift that Black people have to bestow upon their child. Because I was trying to find the passage, but it eludes me, and I'm going to do very horribly in paraphrasing it. But he ultimately says, once the Black parent, is able to impart upon their child the evils of this white world, they instill in the child a desire of hope, of wanting to create something good in the world, something that white parents wish they could be able to give. And I am 7 months into my first pregnancy, and so thankful to be able to birth a daughter prayerfully into this world and be able to bestow upon her that gift of greatness, of good, good that can overcome evil. And so thank you for always sharing these words of wisdom for us.
And, thank you very much for your words. But what is so moving about this essay is, one, it is deeply heartfelt. It is not performative. It is genuine. The other thing is that he establishes the centrality of the mother-child relationship, the role of the mother, and is literally saying that in spite of slavery and the attempt by the slave owners to desecrate Black motherhood, that it asserted itself in spite of that, and that going forward in The Immortal Child, the essay that you mentioned, and in other places, he talks about how we must protect the mother and the child. And that is still a central task of Black people, of the Black community, and of the Black freedom struggle. There is no freedom where we just cast aside mothers and children.
Now, if you want to call in, you still have some time. 215-634-8065. Again, that's 215-634-8065. Or toll free, 1-866-361-0900. Again, toll free, 1-866-361-0900. Melissa Robbins, thank you for waking up with Word.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Listen, Dr. Montero, I just want to thank you. Thank you for sharing such an intimate and personal story and reading the essay from his words, his perspective. He painted a very vivid picture of the love, just to piggyback on your words. The picture was so vivid of the love between mother and child, the description of the hand and his words, the frill. I know that was the cloth on the baby's leg, and that like literally made me sad on the inside. His bravery, his love for his child, yet he could come through it, and just to describe that it was still the importance of family, and we've lost that. And I thought I knew a lot about W.E.B. Du Bois, but it looks like I didn't. I did not know about the death of his son. I did not know these intimate details. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing that with the audience this morning. It makes it easier, at least for me, to go into my day and face the everyday challenges that I know that I have, listening to him and what he had to face during that time right here in Philadelphia.
Well, and I would just suggest, there are photos of his mother, Du Bois's mother, and of he and his mother. And his mother, again, her name was Mary Sylvina Burkhardt. When she was married, Mary Sylvina Burkhardt Du Bois. And she is a beautiful woman. And in that 19th century, no frills, where the beauty comes from within, that strength that we don't see all the time in these days of the false hair and false other things. So it is so interesting, as you say, to hear his words and to feel his soul and his sadness that he lived with for the rest of his life, by the way.
And also Maurice from Southwest, thank you for waking up with Word.
Thank you, Professor. Dr. Montero, your words are so beautiful that I just wish that you could do like a high school tour. And I think if young people heard your words, they would see that the words of Du Bois, especially the entrepreneurships that he wrote about when they were having troubles back in that time, on how we need more of that to save our children, to save our souls, to be more individuals that depending on government or city officials to do our bidding, we can do it for ourselves. And I just want to say, every time I hear you, it's just like the voice is talking to me. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
And also, I see we have some guests in the studio. If you want to talk about some of the ways that Du Bois' work relates to contemporary times, or you want to introduce some of the people you're with today, now would be a great time.
Well, I've introduced them, and you're all familiar with them. And they will be performing this Sunday at the Church of the Advocate. The Saturday Free School is as a gift of thank you and gratitude to the Church of the Advocate. On this Sunday's service, we're providing a gift, and it is our singing. You know, the Saturday Free School has all of these artists and poets and singers and actors. So if you want to meet some of them, this Sunday, December 23rd, at the Church of the Advocate at 10 o'clock. We'll be there.
And any other current contemporary issues you want to relate to some of the readings?
No, I think the issues are very real, contemporary. I mean, you know, there are thinkers who are, how do you say, they never die. Their words speak for themselves. And so I think Du Bois, as Melissa said, I think she got it right. And it's very interesting that the caller from Illinois, Jamila, talked about her first pregnancy, and she's about to give birth, and how she reads Du Bois to her baby in the womb, and what Melissa said also about what these words mean.
All right. Anybody else want to call? You might have a couple more minutes to call in. 215-634-8065. Again, that's 215-634-8065. Or toll free, 1-866-361-0900. Again, that's 1-866-361-0900. And let me make sure I say who's up next before I always forget. The Source. Barbara Grant. No. See, I tried. See? Oh, well, The Source is up next. I know that much. I'm better than yesterday. Yesterday, I don't think I said anything. I was like when TV used to go off and the rainbow bars would come up at 2 a.m. and you just hear that dial tone sound, you know. So I want people to know. Right after this, keep it locked. Again, 215-634-8065. We're talking Du Bois with Dr. Anthony Montero, or toll free, 1-866-361-0900. And if not, any final words you want to say before we close out the show?
Well, yeah, you know, again, I wanted today to bring people into Du Bois's intimate and personal life world, that he was more than a thinker. He was a human being who was born to a mother and father. His father left when he was barely 2 years old, so he was raised by his mother. His mother had a stroke, and she died right after he graduated from high school. I'm certain there were moments of loneliness, moments where he doubted himself. How can I go back out and face the world? How can I write this next essay? How can I go to the next Pan-African conference? How can I stand up against the American war makers? Why me? I'm certain he asked from time to time. And one of the things that I know that I'm trying to understand is, where did that strength come from? Was it from his mother? Was it from the great-grandfather who was from Senegal? Was it from his extended family in Great Barrington, Massachusetts? Was it his going to Fisk University? Was it the fact that he lived all of his life among black folk and fought all of his life for the freedom of black folk? But there's a special strength here. And, you know, one of the things I've committed myself to studying in this year of Du Bois is what produced this type of human being. And I guess the last thing I would say, if Dr. Haidt the superintendent of schools is listening, or anybody associated with public education in Philadelphia, I think they need to consider including Du Bois as a central part of the curriculum. Now, of course, the teachers will have to be taught how to teach Du Bois, but I think, as one of the callers said, Du Bois's work